Business. My name is Tracy Hansen, and I'm with the Washington Center for Women in Business. And today's topic, we're going to be talking about women-owned small business certifications with Ashley Coronado at Washington PTAC. I'm really excited to have Ashley. Thank you for being here today. I
Thanks.
used to be on the PTAC team, so certifications and government contracting is really near and dear to my heart. I'm excited to be working with Ashley again today. Hold on, let me. Thank you to the Tri-Cities Regional Chamber, who's actually sponsoring all of January's Let's Talk Businesses, because they have a Women in Business conference coming up next Wednesday. So this time next Wednesday, I will be, and hopefully you guys will be too, also at either the luncheon or the full day conference. I did see that if you were interested in the luncheon, it's almost full. So if you haven't registered yet, I would register soon, and there's more information at that link that you can find the full agenda. A little bit of housekeeping. I am recording this webinar. It'll be emailed out to everybody. So if there's a piece that you want to listen to again or even share with other colleagues, you're welcome to it. We definitely want to make sure that this is interactive. If you have questions, please feel free to ask them at any time. But in the interim, if you have a noisy office or background noise, if you can mute yourself in between, since this is being recorded. If you have trouble hearing at any time, I definitely recommend using the phone call option, which you can see in the audio pane of your GoToTraining control panel there. There's a computer audio or phone call. If you're having trouble on your computer speakers, usually it's a little bit better if you call in. And then, like I said, please feel free to ask questions at any time to Ashley or myself. You can either raise your hand using this symbol and you can just verbally ask your question, or if you don't have audio capabilities, you can type it in the chat box as well, which is here, and then Ashley and I can see that. So a little bit about the Women's Business Center and why we're here today. The Washington Center for Women in Business is funded in part by the U.S. Small Business Administration, and the SBA realized that women have issues other than the normal technical assistance that sometimes is a barrier to their success in small business, and they wanted to make sure that there is as a resource specifically for women in business. So we do a lot of workshops, either online like this one or in person as well, and then one-on-one coaching. So today we'll be talking in generalities a little bit, but when we do one-on-one coaching, it's more specific to your business. And we can talk about anything that's plaguing you or causing a hurdle for you, whether you're in that startup mode or you're an established business. Social media, marketing, finance, understanding those finance statements especially. So please feel free to reach out if you have any questions. We do cover the entire state of Washington. For the first time to meet with us is free. Every session after that is $25 for the hour-long session. And if that $25 an hour is a barrier for you, we do have scholarships available. So you can contact myself or Christine Buckley. Christine is the business coach that you'd be meeting with one-on-one. And I know that we do have men on the line as well. So even though we are the Washington Center for Women in Business, we are always happy to either help a husband and wife team, or if it's a male-owned business, we have probably 30% of our clients are men. So please don't feel like you can't use us just because you're not a woman-owned business. So with that, I'm going to actually hand it over to you, Ashley.
All right. Perfect. Thank you, Tracy. I'm happy to be here, so thank you for this opportunity to present today. Women-owned business certifications are a bit confusing, and as you'll see when we get into this information, there are more than one that we'll be talking about, and so each has different criteria, different benefits, different ways to apply. So we'll be sure to dive into all of that. So today's agenda, I'll give you a quick overview of what my role is, what PTAC is, and then we'll get into the meat of the webinar, which is, of course, talking about these certifications. So we'll be focusing on the state certification as well as the federal certification. And then I'll also include a couple of other helpful resources to help through this process in addition to PTAC, as you'll see. And then we definitely will have time for Q&A. But if you have questions throughout, feel free to type those in the chat box and we can get to them as appropriate. So a quick overview of PTAC. So PTAC stands for Procurement Technical Assistance Center. PTAC is a program that Congress started back in the 80s to help more small businesses be successful in government contracting. And so PTAC assists with contracting with the federal, state, and local government. And this is a free resource for you. So it's already paid for by your tax dollars. The PTAC program is actually a line item on the Department of Defense budget, and that's where about half of our funding comes from. The other half is matched by whoever our local subcenter or host organization is. So for me, I'm based in the Tri-Cities in Kennewick, and so my host is the Tri-City Regional Chamber of Commerce. And so PTAC assists businesses. We focus on small businesses, but we assist with almost anything related to government contracting. Typically, we do that through counseling sessions, so through phone, email, or in-person meetings. And then we have a variety of different workshops. So some of those are regularly rotated through, and then others are specialty workshops thrown in the mix throughout the year. I know I have lots and lots of workshops down here in the Tri-Cities. I bring in different agencies and prime contractors to talk about what they buy and how they buy as well. So some are taught by me, some are guest presenters, and some are the agencies themselves. But we help businesses with getting registered for government contracting, perhaps getting certified if they qualify for being woman-owned, minority-owned, veteran-owned, and there are a couple of other SBA certifications as well. So we'll be talking about those woman-owned certifications today. Also helping your business to develop marketing materials that are tailored for federal government contracting, helping you to find opportunities and how to bid on those opportunities. And so almost anything that you need help with related to government contracting, we help with. And like I said, all of that's free. We do offer a bid match service that's optional that does have a fee associated. That's basically a time-saving tool to help you find potential opportunities that might be a fit for your business. And so it's just a time-saving search tool. And I've been here in the Tri-Cities with PTAC for about 7.5 years, and we have a really great team in Washington State. Our program is headquartered out of Lacey, Washington, which is where Tracy is as well, at the Thurston Economic Development Council. Tiffany Scroggs is our program director, and then you can see on the screen that we have a number of sub-centers located throughout our state. So we have a really great team made up of retired Navy contracting officer, retired GSA contracting officer. So if I don't know the answer to your question or your particular counselor doesn't have the answer, we have a great team we can tap into, as well as a national network of PTAC counselors. So if you're not in Washington State, I did include the link to our national organization that you can click on their map function and you can find whichever PTAC is closest to you, because we do have coverage in all 50 states, also in Guam, Puerto Rico, and the U.S. Virgin Islands. So what we'll be talking today are women-owned certifications for your business, and we'll first start with the state certification, and then we'll move on to federal. So we'll tackle these one by one. So the first one is state, and you'll see here it says OMWBE, and that's the certifying agency. So we'll get to who they are. And that certification is called Women's Business Enterprise, or WBE. And then we'll move on to federal. So we'll start with the state certification. So first of all, who cares about this? What's the benefit? So with the state certification, that's beneficial for selling your products or services to state agencies. So Washington state agencies, whether that's Department of Natural Resources or Ecology or Agriculture, or it could be any state agency in Washington. The catch here is it's a voluntary goal. So I underline that because I think that's important. You'll see when we get to federal that this is different, and you'll see that there's a mandatory goal. At the state level, it is voluntary. It's actually against the law for them to have a mandatory goal. So what that means is that they're trying to incorporate women, minorities, and veterans into state contracting, and they have a good faith effort going to do that, but it's just not a mandatory goal. So There can still be benefit to getting certified because there is this voluntary goal, and our current governor really puts a lot of emphasis on trying to reach that voluntary goal. There are regular meetings held where they reevaluate or pull the reports and see how they're doing on those goals. So there is quite a bit of effort and outreach. So just because it's not mandatory doesn't mean it's a worthless certification or anything like that. And number two, who also cares, is that there are larger private corporations in our state. Boeing and Starbucks and Costco and others who may also have supplier diversity goals to reach. And so they'll utilize the online directory of certified firms listing the women-owned businesses in their search to include those. So by getting certified, the benefit here is selling to state agencies, and then also in case those large corporations are a potential customer for you, that might get some extra visibility by appearing on that list. So who's eligible at the state level? So they're looking here at a for-profit small business, and they actually utilize the SBA definition of small business here. So for the most part, that means looking at a 3-year average of your revenues. If you're in manufacturing, we'd be looking at number of employees, but it depends on what you do to tell you what that threshold is. Usually for manufacturing, we're looking at 500 employees or less. Construction, I want to say, is $36.5 million. That's a 3-year average. So it depends what you do. Consulting hovers more around 15 million, I believe. But anyhow, if you're a small business, and then the woman or multiple women must own at least 51% of the business and be able to show kind of how they acquired or how they started that business. It's a bit of a red flag if the woman owns 51%, but maybe some other business partner, a man, owns less, but yet put in 90% of the startup capital. So there's some rationale there of why they look at how the business was started. The woman also here should control the managerial and day-to-day operations, be a U.S. citizen, and be economically disadvantaged, which you'll see here. Their definition at the state level is a personal net worth less than 1.32 million. You can deduct your, that should say primary residence, typo, and the applicant business. And so you can pull those out of the calculation, but these are the criteria you'll see for qualifying to apply for this certification at the state level. And a note here is Washington is a community property state in addition to a handful of other states. And so what that means is that even if you as a woman, and maybe you're married and you own 100% of your business, your husband does something completely unrelated, it's actually implied that you own it 50-50. That's just how our state works, even if he's not legitimately considered an owner. So there would be a form that he can sign. It's a non-participation form that he basically says, no, I am not involved in the management of this business. I'm not an owner. I'm purely considered an owner because of community property, and I'm going to sign this form and say that's the case. So that is just a normal piece of this application if the husband is indeed not involved. Maybe I'll back up to one more thing about that. And when it talks about controlling managerial and day-to-day functions, sometimes there's red flags if, I guess in my experience, maybe it's a husband and wife business, maybe it's an auto body shop. Maybe the husband has 20 years experience working on cars. He's worked for other people and that's what he knows. And maybe the wife is kind of running the office, taking care of the books, that sort of thing. And she is majority owner. They kind of also, during the application process, scrutinize who has the technical expertise of that company. So if the husband were to be taken out of the equation, is there still an auto body shop? Can the woman still run an auto body shop? So sometimes there's just some scrutiny there. However, maybe the woman has 20 years of management experience and she's really business savvy and she is the right person to be running all operations, and she's just not technically working on the cars. There's ways around that, but just know that does get heavily scrutinized at the state level through the application process. So how you apply, remember that had OMWBE in parentheses after it when I listed it earlier, and that stands for the Washington State Office of Minority and Women's Business Enterprises. That's an agency or an office located in Olympia. Their website is listed on the slide. They have taken this application fully automated now on their website. That's a change as of maybe October of last year, I want to say. Previously, this was a paper form that got filled out. All of the supporting documents got attached to it. And so it was, by the time you were done, it was a thick binder worth of documents, and those got mailed into Olympia. That is no longer the case. And so this is online. What makes it a little bit tricky is that you can't see the full application before you dive in because it's not a piece of paper anymore. You walk your way through. So I'm still seeing a little bit of challenges just because it's difficult to be fully prepared and ready to go when you haven't seen the whole thing in front of you. So I'm going to work on trying to get a full list or see if they can provide me with an updated paper form. I still have an old one, but anyway, just know that this is an online application now. How you apply, you do this online. It takes about 45 to 60 days for processing. They do assign a certification analyst pretty quickly who will be the person communicating back and forth with you. They'll let you know if they need additional documents, and then you'll be issued a final letter when they make a decision at the end. There is a fee, and that depends on your business structure, whether you're an LLC or a corporation, and so on. So that ranges anywhere from $50 to $100 when you apply. But here is a list of an example, I guess I'd say, of some required documents that they'll likely be asking you for. So proof of citizenship, that documentation of how you bought your business, a resume for each owner and spouses. So even if your husband is not involved in the business and is in an unrelated profession, they scrutinize that, as I mentioned before. So they do ask for resumes for everyone, key personnel as well. And I think that's to see if you're unduly reliant on one of your key staff members, and that maybe they're just making sure that the person who's the owner and who's in charge and running things really has the background to do so, and that they seem to really have full control over their business. A list of equipment, vehicles, office lease, copies of contracts or bids or invoices, or basically something that shows that you really do the type of work you say you do, and that you should get certified in that area. Insurance policies, bonding if you're in a construction-related field, business tax returns, and then whatever company documents you might have, an operating agreement, LLC agreement, bylaws, just whatever you have based on your structure. So these are the types of things they do ask you for. So even though it's an online application, you're still required to attach various documents to prove your answers.
And Ashley, we have a quick question while we're on that
Sure.
page. So she said, I started the application and got stuck on the documentation of initial investment. I opened my business checking account 6 years ago, and neither I or my bank has proof of the initial deposit. Honestly, I think I had $100 on me at that I deposited into the account to start. Any suggestions on that?
Gosh, that's a good question. That might be a question for, and in the resources section coming up, I'll point you to OMWBE does have a phone number, and they always have someone during regular business hours who's on technical assistance. So you can call, and you don't even need to tell them your name or what company you're from. You can just ask a general question like that. That might be a question for them. And I mean, I know that question may even only go back to a certain point. Sometimes they say if your business is within a certain number of years old that they want to see that, but if it's older, but I want to say that might be 7 years. They might say if your business is 7 years old, you don't need to show proof. So I'm not exactly sure. I can look a little closer at that though. Initial investment. Because I don't think that should be a major barrier. I think that should, I think what they're mainly looking for here is that kind of the example I gave before of maybe you are a woman and you have a male business partner. You own the majority, but yet he put in most of the money, and the documentation shows that. A lot of businesses start up too with not needing a lot of money. Maybe they just need a computer and a couple of things. It kind of depends on, if you're in trucking and you had to buy a semi, or if you needed forklifts or what you might have needed for your business. They just want to see, if you got a business loan, whose name is on that loan? Is it the woman's name? So they're kind of just looking for red flags of different sorts. But I think that the OMWBE technical assistance line could help. Or like I said, I'd be happy to look closer at that.
Great,
so now
thank
let's
you.
move. Sure. So let's move to the federal level, and we'll go over many of the same things. There's just a little bit more to it. So at the federal level, the SBA is kind of in charge there, and we're going to talk about a few layers because you can be a woman-owned company, but then there's some subcategories, and only certain companies can qualify for those. So we're going to dive in a little deeper. But again, who cares at the federal level? So this is where those mandatory goals come into play. Federal government has small business subcontracting goals. And so you'll see that I've kind of made a list here of the federal-wide goals, and women-owned businesses is one of those goals. So basically it's a rule that our different federal agencies and large prime contractors need to do business with women. So that is a little bit more enticing, I guess, than a good faith effort goal. So we'll take a closer look at how you qualify. So I mentioned there's a few layers here. So the first one is woman-owned business. So basically that means that your business is at least 51% owned, managed, and controlled by one or more women who are U.S. citizens. And so if you meet those criteria, you can self-certify and it's free. So the Online System for Award Management, or SAM, excuse me, is a federal database that you have to be registered in order to do federal contracting. So that's found at sam.gov. And when you fill that out, you basically have the option to check a box that says woman-owned business. So if you're meeting those criteria, you can check the box and you're done. So for those different agencies and primes who have that goal to do business with women, you've done it. You've pledged that you really are a woman-owned small business. But there's more to it here. So when you do check that box, there's a couple more that auto generate underneath that you have the option of also checking. However, only certain businesses qualify for these additional categories. So it depends on what industry you're in. The SBA has determined that there's certain industries where women are underrepresented. And so if you are in one of those industries, and I've provided a list of NAICS codes to Tracy, excuse me. So you will be provided with those afterwards. What you do is check the list and see if you are in one of those industries. If so, then you may want to pursue further certification more than just checking that box. And we're going to talk about how you do that. I just want to be clear that this isn't for everyone, only certain industries. So step one really is checking and seeing if you are a fit. And then if you are, then you can pursue the certification that we're going to talk about in these coming slides. This certification is only required, though, if you're bidding on a woman-owned small business set-aside contract, meaning a contract where only women are allowed to bid. A lot of contracts aren't that way, so you can still just bid, and if you're a woman-owned business, they'll check your SAM, and they'll say, yep, they checked the box, great, we can count them toward our goal. And that's good enough. However, every once in a while, in one of these certain industries, federal agencies or primes can put out a set-aside contract where only women can bid. And so if it's going to be set aside for only women, they need to do a little more due diligence than just checking SAM. Because, what if someone checked the box in an error or was untruthful? So that's where this certification comes in that I'm going to talk about next. Another benefit to this is that you can receive sole source awards where you aren't competing. You're basically given a contract. And when I backed up here, the third one listed, economically disadvantaged women-owned small business, is another subcategory, and that has an additional net worth or some additional financial thresholds that you have to qualify for. So you can see I listed those out here. Personal net worth less than $750,000, excluding primary residence, equity in the business, and retirement accounts if they're kind of the typical kind that you can't access before a certain age without penalty. And then also annual income averaged over the past 3 years can't exceed $350,000, and fair market value of all assets cannot exceed $6 million. Again, I want to be clear that there's only certain NAICS codes or certain industries that qualify for this one. So I've also given Tracy that list. So there's going to be two different lists of industries. One that qualifies for WOSB, woman-owned small business, and another for EDWOSB, or economically disadvantaged woman-owned. If you are economically disadvantaged woman-owned small business, you also are woman-owned small business. So if I back up and show you that this was kind of a three-tiered approach, if you qualify for the very bottom one, you're also in the one above it and the one above that. If you only qualify for WOSB, you're not WOSB, if that makes sense. It's a bit confusing, and that's where PTAC can help you. We can take a look at that and make sure that you know where you can fit in. A note down at the bottom here, they do also look a bit at spousal finances, and what you can do here when you fill out the financial forms is what you do is you split things in half. So say for example purposes, your house is $100,000, you can split it and put 50 on your financial piece and 50 on your spouse's. And so that's kind of how you do that there. So when you're looking at this personal net worth of $750, that's with splitting things as well. So how do you
let me just interject really quickly. I'm sorry.
Sure.
Somebody just asked if they needed to be furiously taking notes or if the slideshow will be or given to them. I will be emailing that out to everybody. But if anybody wanted to print it out right now and make notes on the slideshow, it is in the materials pane of the go-to training control panel. So you can download it there. That's also where the EDWOSB NAICS list and the WOSB NAICS list is there now, but I'll also be emailing it out later this afternoon, just so everybody doesn't have to write down everything that Ashley's saying next.
Perfect. Thanks, Tracy. I meant to say that up front as well. So how do you get certified? So remember, you've already been able to check the woman-owned box in SAM, that one box that just says, yep, our company is at least 51% owned, managed, and controlled by a woman who is a U.S. citizen. But if you've determined, hey, wait a minute, my industry is on that list that qualifies to continue on with this certification, that's where this comes in. So there's two ways to certify. First way is online for free. You can self-certify at certify.sba.gov, which is kind of a newer SBA portal site, and it's pretty clean and easy to use, I guess I would say. And I'll be showing you kind of a list of required documents coming up here. The second way instead is that you could utilize a third-party certifier, which will have a fee associated. There are only, I believe, 4 or 5 certifiers nationwide, and I could provide those if anyone's interested in those. It's U.S. Women's Chamber of Commerce and a few different groups, and they do charge a fee. Like I said, roughly I'd say $300, give or take, which I believe is paid annually. So as PTACs, typically I direct people to option number 1. Technically, Congress wrote self-certification out of law a couple of years ago, which is interesting. But the SBA still has this option. And so I think what will be coming in the near future is that the SBA will likely come up with some sort of a more regimented review process that possibly undergoes a review by a live human, as they do with some of their other certifications. So I think that there will be changes coming. But for now, I say just move forward with the free, easy online version. To be honest, this whole federal version is easier less work than the state certification that we talked about earlier in the presentation. So this one can actually be done, in a day if you want to, whereas the other one would take a little bit more time and effort to gather everything. But once you go through this process and you get certified, then you can go back into SAM and check those additional boxes that populated when you clicked that you were woman-owned. So don't go checking those WOSB and EDWOSB boxes in SAM quite yet till you've actually gotten certified. Because what happens when you certify that and you submit your record in SAM is you're swearing that everything that you've just submitted is accurate and true. And so you're saying, I'm certified. I've already gone through this process. And if you haven't, that's a problem. You're misrepresenting yourself. So that's something I check on with clients when I'm looking at their records in SAM. I always check to see if that's accurate and if they've actually done that. Because when you go through this SBA self-certification, like I said, what you're doing here is you're uploading documents and nobody is actually looking them over and certifying you. They're kind of sitting out there in online limbo in the cloud. And what will happen is in the future, if you choose to bid on a woman-owned small business set-aside contract and you're the apparent awardee, meaning the apparent winner, and they're probably going to award to you, then the contracting officer will ask you to grant them access into this online repository where they can view your proof and ensure that you truly are a woman-owned small business. And so until that point, it's likely just sitting out there in the cloud, like I said. And so if you upload something incorrectly or whatnot, no one's going to catch that because it's just kind of out there on its own. So it's a great idea to work with your PTAC counselor, have them check everything over, make sure everything looks good and that you're uploading all the appropriate documents. This is what the certified site looks like when you go to it. You'll create a login so that you can get in here. And this is also where other SBA applications are located. The 8A application, if you've maybe heard of that one. Hub Zone application will be moving here, I believe, in the fall. So the benefit to that is that if you're applying for multiple certifications, that your documents can all be stored in here. And there is some overlap between certifications, so it's just kind of nice that you can have everything in one place. But this is the site where you would go to certify yourself as a woman-owned small business at the federal level. In terms of what they're going to want from you, this is a preparation checklist. They will want you to be active in SAM first. So if you're new to government contracting, we'll back up a bit and we'll get you in SAM and that sort of thing first. And that's what PTAC can help you with. That's really important, but that is step one. And then you can go in here and get all registered and upload all your proof. So when I mentioned that nobody is reviewing these documents, something like your passport, you might upload and next year or the year after it might expire. So you'll just have to remember that you need to keep that information current. If you use a birth certificate, that's a different story, but just know that you'll need to be in charge of making sure all of this is current. And then mainly business documents are what they're looking for here. This list looks long, but really some of these depend on what your structure is, and you may only have to include a few business documents. If you go the extra step and you qualify for the economically disadvantaged piece on top of that, you'll do everything I just showed you on the previous slide, and then you'll include some financial information as well. So here they're looking for an IRS form, 3 years of personal taxes, 3 W-2s, and then some more information about your assets and that sort of thing. Remember to make sure that you fall beneath those thresholds that they outlined. And so here they're not really taking into account community property, but you will split anything that you own with a spouse in half, like I mentioned. So any homes or vehicles or bank accounts, whatever it might be, will get split. And so you'll still include his or her financial information as well. So just a word of caution here. This comes from the government contracting attorney, Stephen Coprince's blog. He has a government contracting blog that's found at smallgovcon.com. It's a great place to find government contracting news, and typically I hear about changes in regulations here first. But anyway, he has highlighted just one of those horror stories that we sometimes hear about where maybe a woman claimed to own the business and it was a bit of a front, and the husband actually had the highest officer position and was managing day to day. And so as this is read through, you'll see that it mentions, I think, that the woman was CEO, but then when they actually look through corporate meeting minutes, there is no position created for being a CEO. And so it was a non-existent position. And they even, I think, later in the article talked about how the husband was the one actually communicating with the SBA about this whole ordeal and this situation. And so that's another red flag, is if it truly is a woman-owned small business, the woman would probably be communicating with the SBA through this scandal process. And so anyway, just know that by self-certifying and checking these boxes that you are obligating yourself to following these regulations and saying that you understand the regulations. And so it's great to sit down or chat with a PTAC counselor to make sure you know what you're agreeing to exactly. If you've ever filled out your SAM record, there's a whole lot of legal jargon in there. And as PTACs, we aren't lawyers. We can't provide legal advice, but we can help you try to interpret those regulations and make you feel more comfortable as you're signing these important documents. So as you fill out these different pieces of, or these different applications, and as you know what the different agencies are scrutinizing through their review, things to consider. I mean, who has the authority to sign checks? Signing checks is an indicator who has signing authority at the bank of who's really in charge. Who's the primary point of contact in SAM? Who's communicating with OMWVE or with the SBA in any communications? Whose signature is listed on the office lease or the insurance policy or the bid you submitted? Those are all really important things, and you want to be consistent here, especially if you're in a husband-wife business where the wife truly is owner. Then really having her name on everything is really important to demonstrate that consistency throughout everything in the business. So I mentioned earlier there's this 5% goal at the federal level. So how's the government doing? A couple of years ago, they met their goal, but now they've been kind of hovering around this 4.7, 4.8%. This is for fiscal year 2017, which ended last September 30th. And you can see they fell a bit short, 4.71% out of 5. So that's a bit of a problem. A lot of the other goals are being reached, and this one's not. And so even though there's a women-owned small business program that came about in about 2012 or so, that this whole certification came to be, you'll see that there's still a bit of a struggle. So why is that? I mean, I don't know the answer to that question. I think there's some contracting officers that don't quite understand how to use the repository and verify businesses are women-owned, and so they shy away from putting out a set-aside contract. But as a women-owned business, I mean, it's great to still approach contracting officers or buyers as they're forming their acquisition strategy and see if you can get it set aside for women. Your PTAC counselor can talk to you more about that, but you can still try to shape how an acquisition is put out for bid, and especially in the early stages, if it's still in kind of a pre-solicitation phase or a sources sought phase or just being planned, there's opportunity there. So definitely be on the lookout for opportunities that are for women. For looking for women-owned small business set-asides, like I've mentioned, you can visit FedBizOps or FBO.gov. This is where federal opportunities over $25,000 are posted, and there's actually a drop-down where the arrow is pointing set-aside code, where you can select women-owned small business and see what's posted for only women to bid. I did that a couple of days ago, and so you can see here is a snapshot of what I saw posted for women to bid. The second one down is actually an award, so that's already been awarded. But you can see here there's a variety of agencies: the Navy, Homeland Security, Air Force, Army, who are utilizing the women-owned small business program. So if you do qualify and you think you may be interested in selling to the federal government, then it's great to pursue that certification now so you're ready to go. That way, if you see something posted you're all ready to go and you're not frantically trying to upload your documents. So definitely chat with your PTAC counselor about getting ready and positioning yourself to be ready for these opportunities. And so the PTAC contact information was on our earlier slide, and mine will be on the final slide. But in addition to that, here are a couple of other resources to help you through these processes at the state level. OMWBE, again, is the certifying office in Olympia. They have a phone number and an email address dedicated to technical assistance. Like I said, you can call and ask a question without revealing your name, and just get confirmation that you're doing everything correctly. And then also at the federal level with the SBA, they do have a dedicated email address for the Women-Owned Small Business Program. But I would encourage you to work with your PTAC counselor first. They're probably a little bit easier to reach and can answer various questions for you. A lot of us also have relationships with our district SBA offices that we can always call and ask them a quick question if we need to on your behalf as well. And so to reiterate that PTAC is basically here to help you with anything related to government contracting free of charge, with certifications being a piece of that. So we can help review these documents before you submit them, help you through the state process or the federal process. Again, it's very important to realize that the state certification is beneficial for state contracting. Federal is beneficial for federal contracting. So they are not interchangeable. Federal customers of yours won't care if you have the state certification and vice versa. They are very separate and they stay in their own lane. So it may be beneficial for you to go after one or the other based on whoever you're selling to or want to sell to, or perhaps both of them, because you may just want to get all your ducks in a row for all of your potential customers. And as Tracy mentioned earlier, I just want to remind you that the Tri-Cities Women in Business Conference is coming up next week. It's an event of the Tri-City Regional Chamber of Commerce, which is where I'm based. And the registration deadline is today, actually. So they are filling up. There are spots left, but it's almost full. So you can visit the Regional Chamber's website to see the agenda of the conference, and the pricing is listed here as well. But it's a great event. We've had it since, 2012. So this will be our sixth event, I believe. And we have a great keynote speaker. We have morning and afternoon keynotes, so a great lunch. And I think we're expecting over 600 people at lunch. And it's just a great day of networking, education, inspiration, motivation. It's a great day. Additional questions for me? I know this is a lot of information. You will get the slides. And I encourage you to reach back out to me or to any PTAC based on your location to get more clarification if you want to look at these and how they apply to your business specifically. But I'm open for questions if there are any, Tracy.
So somebody wants to know if I guess if they're not interested in selling to a public entity or a large company like Boeing, which certification would you recommend they get?
So I think if I interpret that right, if they're not planning to sell to state or federal government or a large corporation, then I'm not sure that these that I've talked about are beneficial. I think there are some others out in the private world. I know there's like the WeBank certification, which I don't know a lot about. You might know more about that, Tracy, but there's others that are out potentially might be more valuable. So I guess the ones we're talking about today are specific to selling to government. And so if that's just not your market, that there might be other certifications. And those are the ones that I don't really know about, but maybe Tracy or others can shed some light on those. So you may want to reach out to them directly.
Yeah, the WeBank one is one of those third-party ones Ashley was mentioning. And I think there are some benefits to it, but I know that a lot of it is kind of those public sector ones. Mm-hmm. And just because you're not certified as one of these two things, or these ones that she mentioned, doesn't mean that you're not a woman-owned small business.
Yeah. I guess I'd say, it can't hurt at the federal level to at least mark yourself as a woman-owned business, and SAM couldn't hurt, because even if you don't plan to sell the federal government, you never know when someone's looking for a teaming partner or a prime contractor is looking for a sub, or really the government buys almost everything. So you may not think the federal government's a customer for you, but they really might be. So registering in SAM, which is free, might not be a bad way to go because it's not a large use of your time and money. It's free and it's not too time consuming. Maybe it takes an hour the first time you do it, but so it couldn't hurt to just still get yourself in the registrations and mark yourself as women owned. But we can always talk more about that specifically. It kind of depends. I mean, if you're maybe like a florist or something like that, and you really don't think government is your market, that could be a different story. So, or a restaurant or something like that. It just kind of depends. We could talk more about that specifically one-on-one. So feel free to reach out to me or your local PTAC.
Yes. Yeah, I think that's great.
Are there additional questions? I switched the slides so that my info is on the slide. This is how you can contact me directly. But I'm still open for additional questions if there are some.
Well, while we wait for those to come in, I think, so reaching out to Ashley, I think, is a great thing. If you're in the Tri-Cities area or not, she can always direct you to the right person. But I wanted to bring your attention to, we have a kind of a beginners laying the groundwork for government contracts taught by Ashley's colleague, actually, Kate Hoy out of the Lacey PTAC office, coming up on April 4th. If you wanted to kind of get that introductory and get your toe wet a little bit in government contracting, you absolutely don't have to wait until April 4th, this webinar, in order to explore that, though. If that's something that you want to do, I highly recommend reaching out to PTAC. They got a very smart team that knows a lot of stuff about a lot of stuff. So highly recommend it if you've ever thought about the state or the federal, or even, school districts or cities or counties or any of them that have those public funds.
Definitely. We miss having Tracy on our team. She's a great resource.
I know. I miss my nerdy government contracting day. Definitely. Well, I don't see any other questions coming in. If you don't have any, unless you have anything else to add, Ashley, I think this concludes the webinar. We can stick around for a minute. If you're typing right now, we'll stick around to listen to your question. But you're welcome to enjoy the rest of your Wednesday.
Thanks, Tracy.
Thanks, Ashley.